You may have heard of our next guest if you haven't already got a photo of her on your phone. Please welcome to the stage Sharni Layton. You're not running those heels. There we go. I'm conscious that everyone over here can't see Sharni, so I'm going to break that.
Can we lift it up? Have we got... That's right.
Is that one of your skills
I'm also
too?
like you. Neither of us need a microphone, do we?
Ready? We'll lift it?
Yep. 3, 2, 1.
No, that's the top.
Oh, no, I broke it. No, but actually, where are we
As long as you don't break me. I'm just moving it here.
I thought you were joking.
No, I wasn't joking. There we go.
Good.
Right, now have a seat. You've got to sit down.
Okay. Oh, good. Before we start, can I just get everyone to stand up? Like, you've been sitting for so long. Get out of your seats. Have a stretch. Move around. Can I get you, say to the person on your table with your country, we love netball. Say, we are great at netball. Now turn around to another table and say, we're better at netball than you. And we all love a bit of rivalry, don't we? Up the Aussies. Alright, sit back down. I just want to give you a bit of a stretch. You've been sitting down for so long. You need to get it out. Alright, yeah, sure. Now I'll sit down.
There you go.
Thank you. Now I can rest my voice. I've actually got really bad nodules from yelling so much in my netball career.
I would never have guessed.
That's my long-term injury.
Yeah.
Alana didn't say that, but maybe that can be your next talk.
Yeah, we'll roll that one out. For those that don't know, this is Sharni Layton. She used to play netball a bit. She still plays netball a bit. She's also crossed to another sport that we'll get onto as well. She's also worn an England dress. Rather recently.
Yes, it burnt my skin. I've still got the marks underneath here. That's why I wore a T-shirt today.
Something to do the fact that we're better at netball than you.
Oh, I don't think so.
No,
you got one out of how many?
Right.
Shall we go over the stats?
Possibly, maybe not. Yeah, this will be the toughest court I've been on. Yeah. Sharni, we've done, so from the top level to coaches, you kind of encompass all of that, just in case you didn't know.
Thank you, yeah.
But can we go back to the beginning?
We can, absolutely.
I was hearing about where your parents came from, which wasn't quite expected, and there could be someone else in here that could sign you up to play for their netball team, couldn't there?
Oh, well, yeah, so my parents are from Scandinavia, so my mum's Norwegian, half Danish. So I don't know if we have a netball team over there, but I think we better get them in there. We definitely need to start one. They're ginormous. Get those korfballers over. And I'm not sure where father is from, so yeah, but that's the background of my family.
So you could go and start a netball team in Norway, captain that, and still play. And when you were growing up, when's the point when you went, right, I love netball, this is something I'm going to do?
It actually came a bit later. I was just a really passionate person about sport in general. I started netball when I was 5, literally just because mum coached and my sister played. But I didn't come serious about it until I was maybe 16, 17 because I was just so uncoordinated. I was 6 foot at 13, weighed 60 kilos, couldn't run. I was, Alana's absolute nightmare. And that didn't change, although I did get a little bit stronger as I went on. But I actually did horse riding as well when I was growing up. So that was my priority. I wanted to ride in the Olympics. And so funnily enough, even after I started making some netball teams in the state team and the under-21 Australian team, my goal was after World Youth Cup to quit netball and to aim for the Olympics in horse riding. But obviously that was a really great journey for me and it continued on after that.
Could have been an Olympic horse rider.
I still can be. Those guys ride till they're like 80. Let's be real. That's impressive.
Dressage for you. Yeah, you could totally do that. So the point at which you realise, right, I love this sport, when does it become something that you've always been competitive, but you think, I can make a career out of it? Did it ever become that?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. And, we are very fortunate over in Australia and the hard work that we've done to make netball professional. At the start when I got picked up in 2004. I was 16 years old and we got paid $1,000 a year. And that just went to mum for driving me around. But funnily enough, so I sat on the bench for 6 years. I was 3 years in Melbourne. I went to Canberra for a year in an under-21 Australian side to try and develop myself properly because I wasn't getting any game time. Through that, I then went back to the Melbourne Vixens, which is the ANZ Championship, and I thought, this is my go. I'm going to make it now. And I was one of 5 players to not step on court that year. That was at the age of 20. So I decided to go back to the Australian Institute of Sport, which was 21 and under, to build my confidence back up. And that was the year of World Youth Cup, which was amazing. And then the year after that, so that was 5 years of sitting on the bench. And to be honest, I loved it at the start, but then I started getting a bit frustrated when you're training 8 times a week and you're giving up everything to be here and you're not actually playing. It was really tough. So at the end of that year, I got a call from everyone's across the ANZ Championship Super Netball teams, yes? Just, yeah. So I got a call from Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth. And so I decided to go to Adelaide for something different because obviously sitting on the bench for 5 years in Melbourne wasn't really working out for me. So in 2010, at the age of 22, I moved to Adelaide and I started playing, which was amazing. And before I left, I literally said to my mum and dad and sister, I'm moving over to Adelaide, but if I sit on the bench for one more year, I'm going to quit and go to horse riding because I know that I've given it everything that I can. And it's a little bit of a cliche because it's like, you know how everyone says, you know, as soon as you feel like you're about to quit, that's when you just need to keep going and the door opens up. And that literally happened with me. I was about to quit. And then that year I started playing with the Adelaide Thunderbirds. I got Rookie of the Year. I was like, Rookie of the Year? Do you know that I've already been around 6 years? That no one even knew of me. And, you know, I started getting paid a semi-professional wage of $15,000 a year, which, you know, for a 22-year-old was massive. So for me, that's when the spark really grew. If I could make something of myself here. I won the premiership that year with the Adelaide Thunderbirds and I made the Australian squad for the first time. And I thought, wow, like I think I'm going to quit netball, but not because I'm not playing, but because I achieved everything in a year. This was amazing. So for me, that's when the passion really took over and I got a sniff of it and was like, well, what else can I do now? And then it was 2011 that I made the Australian team, which was a World Cup year, obviously. And to be that, my very first Australian team was phenomenal. It just gave me absolute goosebumps. So that's where the passion started, I reckon.
That passion that clearly was with you then, who's supporting you in that moment? If we're talking about good governance, so as you're coming up and through, who's saying to you, right, this is the pathway that you're going to take in that 1 year, incredible year, look what you've achieved, look what you've done, and this is how it goes from here. Are people having those conversations with you?
No, not earlier on. I think, well, not that you're really noticing anyway, but I was still very supported. Netball Australia have a really great framework. I was really supported through the 21 and under Australian program, which gave me the ability to train a lot more than what I would have been able to otherwise. But when you're getting there, it's just about, like, netball's just a grind, and that's why we love it, right? So obviously now I play AFLW, and in Australia, there's over 300 girls that are playing that, and people go to me, you know, if you had the choice now when you were younger, would you do AFLW or netball? And I'm like, well, netball hands down, because as Alana just said, there's 1.2 million girls in Australia that play it, let alone how many all over the world, and I got to be in the top 12 in that, which is just so elite. And that was because of how Netball Australia trained us up in regards to trying so hard, but then when you didn't make it, you wanted to work harder to be able to make it. And they definitely provided the framework and the support from the governance to the clubs in that system for us to be able to get there.
I know we're skipping forward a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But your well-documented mental health and how that's affected you. You mentioned the grind that netballers go through, and it is a bit of a wheel that you get on, right? Is that what ultimately affected you? Is the fact you step on that, you want to keep up that almost that high, of being of an international netballer, of winning, of being part of that process, that you don't get the moment to step back and go, okay, I just need a break from it, I just need a breather?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I guess to fast forward from, you know, making that team in 2011, the Australian team, and that being phenomenal, fast forwarding on to then I won a premiership with the Adelaide Thunderbirds, and you almost get a bit greedy. You just want more and you want more. And then the following year, I made the Commonwealth Games for the first time. And that's probably when I really started becoming more of a professional netballer, and the work really started ramping up for netball in the media and sponsorships and everything outside of the sport as well. So it really was full time. And, you know, we go from playing in our domestic competition, which is amazing, for 6 months of the year, straight into international competition, which is for 6 months of the year. And you're just going for 12 months straight without even realising it. And I guess for me on my journey, because it was quite tough to make it, because I wasn't great at the start, I had to move around for 10 years. And so, you know, from Adelaide, I went over to Sydney. So the story behind that was good old Rob Wright. I have to give him a bit of a mention in helping me get to the top. But, you know, when I was looking at moving, because I was still sitting on the bench for Australia, I called up a few different coaches and said, you know, how do you think I'm playing? How are you going to make me better? And how can I get there? Because my focus was all around being the best netballer, not the best human, I guess, that I could be. And he goes, Sharni, you're good, but you're not great. Your footwork's pretty average. But if you come to Sydney, I will make you the best netballer in the world. And arguably, I think he did a pretty good job. Not patting myself on the back, but I was pretty happy with how I played in the end. But that was my focus. It was my goal. It was my dream to be the best netballer. I didn't know anything else. And we won the Commonwealth Games. We won the World Cup. And we got to 2016 and I'd get home at night by myself. And underneath all of that, like, I was just lonely. I was so sad because it wasn't for earning all of this stuff. And I shouldn't say stuff. It was so important to me. But playing netball wasn't fulfilling me as a human anymore, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I was telling you this story earlier of I went home to Melbourne for a leadership thing for the Diamonds, and I didn't even get to see my family. And I was at a hotel that night, and I called my mum as a 28-year-old woman in hysterics, and I was bawling my eyes out. And I said, Mum, I'm so lonely. Like, I'm surrounded by people every single day, and I've never felt... Sorry, and I get a bit emotional talking about it. Yeah, it was tough. I obviously don't talk about this much, but I think the reason that I'm here talking to you about it today is because it's so important for you to see what effect it has on the athletes to not have a break and to not see our families. And, you know, all of your athletes are now playing in Super Netball, whether it's here in the UK, whether it's in your competition in New Zealand, and like, they just can't keep going. You can't go for 12 months straight. And yes, thank you. You know, and I'm not having a crack at anyone here, please get me right. But, you know, the girls after this World Cup are going straight back to Australia and are playing the following week. And that's not okay. Like, things need to change. And I'm not pointing the finger and saying anyone's in the wrong here, but you know, we need to work together as every single country to be able to say, okay, can there be a month a year where no one is playing netball, you know? So, you know, girls aren't getting dragged back to Jamaica, back to England, back to the Diamonds, so that they can actually have that time off to be humans, to see their families. You know, I know Janelle Fowler has left her daughter. You know, I know that there are girls that have moved away from their families to support them, and it's so great now that we're getting paid, but that's also sacrificing you as a human. I can tell you between my you know, my wage from netball, my wage from the Australian team, and I had 8 sponsorships from being me in the end, and I was on a great wicket, but I was the most depressed human being that there was. And when I finally figured out, so I was obviously feeling really crappy, moved back to Melbourne. This is a bit fast forward. Moved back to Melbourne, and then moving back to Melbourne, I still didn't get to see my family because how many netball and work commitments that I had. I started having these breakdowns that I had with my mum, like started it off monthly, fortnightly, weekly, daily. And by the time I got into Aussie Diamonds camp in 2017, halfway through the year, I'd lost 6 kilos. And as you can see, I don't really have much weight to lose as it is. And they were like, oh, wow, you're not good. So it's not just about, it's the governance of our sport. Netball Australia have always been great, but the problem is that our clubs weren't able to look after us in a way that Netball Australia could. So it's about how we can all work together to be able to work with our clubs around looking after our athletes. And so they were saying, all right, Shans, we need you eating 6 times a week. We need you sleeping, 10 hours a night. We need you doing this to get back for the next tour. And I was committed to doing it. But as I went back home, I realised I couldn't do it. I realised that I wasn't well enough to be there anymore. Then I called Angie Bain, who was our wellbeing officer, who's the most phenomenal woman alive. And I wouldn't have got through it without her, to be honest. And she got me onto a psychiatrist and psychologist the next week. And I sat down and he goes, Sharni, you are severely depressed, you have a mood disorder, and your anxiety's through the roof. I was like, wow, hit me with another one. You know, I've really been good at being the best in the world, but now I'm the best in the world at everything. I've always had a motto, if you're going to do it well. And that I did. But I wish that I didn't get myself there in the first place. But in saying that, if I didn't, maybe I wouldn't have been as good an athlete as what I was either. But I do believe we can create a really great balance of keeping our athletes as humans. We need to be people first, athlete second, and we can still be really great performers if we do that and keep that at the forefront of our minds.
I think you should just take a moment to realise that the infectiousness of your ability to talk, to communicate what you're doing is felt in this room, but it's felt beyond this room as well, with little girls growing up, with those that have played alongside you, with those that are going to continue to play as well. So thank you for that. All your achievements on court are being matched and then some by everything you're doing off court at the moment. I know it's difficult to talk about it because it's raw, right? It is raw. But the importance of you being here is that these are the decision makers and these are the key people that are looking after the athletes, be it the athlete on the 8-year-old girl coming up and through, or be it those that are about to step out here in Liverpool. So it's about listening to you. That's the key message. If there's one thing that they could all go away with and say, right, we're going to try and make that happen within our federations with what we're doing, what would you want them to do?
It's interesting because I was listening before when we were talking about all the bullying and stuff in sport, and it comes from trust, building trust with your athletes from the governance level, because sometimes we can't talk to our coaches and we can't talk to even teammates, to be honest, and because someone will tell someone who whatever it might be. And so to have someone in your governance in sport that your players can turn to and say, this is how I feel, this is what's going on right now. And it's not about them whinging or complaining, but you know, if that's how they're feeling, they need to be validated for that, and it needs to be assessed in whether or not it's something that needs to be addressed. And sometimes as well, maybe it's the player's attitude that needs to be addressed, but then they also need help with that as well. So walking away from here, there's so much that I want to do, but just support your athletes as people first, whether it is that they need their family time, whether it is that they need a break, that, you know, sometimes they're worried that their position's going to go if, you know, they take a break and that you're going to bring someone else in. And just looking after them and making sure that they do have a really well-rounded lifestyle. But I think the biggest thing that I'm asking of all of you, which is what I said before, is just to work together, drop your egos. We all have them. You know, I've got a big one. But work together around how can we make our competitions around the world? How can we make Super Netball, Super League in the UK, ANZ Champs in New Zealand? How can we make them all work together? I know that there's broadcasting that we have to work with as well, but how we're working in our international competitions, because I can guarantee you the healthier your players are, the longer that you will have them. They'll be more sustainable for your sport and you will have longer success in the future. We have the best women's sport in the world right here. In netball, we have so many women all over the world, and if we work together, we can take over the world, you know, whether it be some kind of world league or joining in with things. I've got ideas, come and chat to me, we'll do it. But just, and also, sorry, the last thing as well, when, you know, we have all these injury programs, which is great, but the hardest thing for me was having depression and coming back into a sporting environment. There was nothing to support me through that. And everyone helped as much as they possibly could. But with a brain injury, you know, you need time to recover. Sometimes you might need 10 minutes training and then build that up to 20 minutes training, build that up to an hour. But if you have another breakdown, that needs to come back down to 30 minutes. And no one in the world, I don't think, has a program that can help people come back in after they've had a bit of a breakdown or whatever it might be. So that's something that we can also lead the way in as well.
We're going to talk about where you are now.
Yes.
And the other sport that you're smashing.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, though, that will always be with you, right? Whenever we talk about mental health, it's something there with physical health, as you just mentioned. Yes. So I know that you're keen as players to form an association, to be part of what they're trying to do here as well, and to give voices.
Yes.
To. When you were in that moment, how much did you feel you could talk to other players? Would it be helpful to have something independent away from your teammates who you rely on the court as well as off it?
Absolutely. I think all the support, not all support, but the majority needs to come away. And I think the reason I got so much out of my support from my psychiatrist and my psychs is because they put me as a human first, and they understood my personality, what I was going through, what I had to put aside to be a netballer, and they didn't care whether I was playing good or, excuse my language, shit netball. They cared that I was okay as a human being first and foremost. And I think no matter what happens, when you're in this environment of being athlete driven, even the athletes are like, yeah, but you'll get back out there, right? Like, you want to get back out there, right? Like, we're going to play together still. So they want to help you, but it's still, we've all got that same goal of wanting to get back out on court. So it's so important to have that support away from sport that has just a neutral human being point of view, to be able to support you through what it is that you are actually going through.
So to have that mind gym as much as the physical gym.
Yeah, and that's always been my motto anyway, you know, like even success, whoever wins this tournament, it's 80% above the shoulders. You know, we can do everything physically, but it's the one that can, you know, get that intercept in the dying moments, or the one that can shoot that goal in the last minute, because that's where their mindset is at. But unfortunately for me, I've always had anxiety. I used to have anxiety attacks when I was 17. So I started seeing a sports psychiatrist very young, but then I got too good at sports psychology and learned how to turn off from the real world. So then it was a matter of just weaning it back off a little bit.
Yeah, it's that mind-body disassociation, isn't it? On your T-shirt, it says, "I choose creating choices." This is going to be launched this evening when we bid farewell to Molly and talk about her legacy. But you chose netball originally. Kind of then, did you feel like it was taking the choice away from you at some parts, taking the love away from you, you know, when you get into something? So if there is anyone, regardless of any job you're in, any position, there'll be people here working who are feeling under pressure, feeling that strain. To remind yourself, how do you remind yourself that you love sport, that you chose sport, that this was something that was your passion, that you wanted to be involved in?
You need to take time away. And like players, I know all of you, like I was going to sit here and chat about, you know, for the players that go for 12 months of the year, you know, it's like you all taking annual leave, you know, but taking your laptop with you and being on. But then I was thinking about it, I'm like, you probably all do that. I doubt there'll be many people in this room that do actually take a break. So for me, it's creating that, you know, enough people around you that you can actually disappear off the planet for a little while, whether it be 3 or 4 weeks, and be a human. Go be with your families that love you very much, that want to have you around every now and again. And if you have that, then you can keep that love and joy within the sport. But if you keep just grinding away, then eventually you'll probably end up just leaving. And unfortunately for me, I broke and I lost my passion to play. And if I couldn't be that passionate Sharni Layton, then I wasn't going to be a netballer at all. So that was in my choice to leave. You
found that new passion with a new sport. Tell us about that and what that first moment was crossing the white line on a field.
It's horrific. Who, put your hands up if you don't know what AFL is in this room. Does everyone know what AFL is? Yeah, so Australian rules football. So it is, you can tackle people, and so I think everyone thought that I was going to be really tough. But the difference is in netball, because you're both going for the ball, you can go hard because you know that you're not going to get taken out. Whereas in football, there's someone running at you, and I'm more than happy to run away. I play a position called ruck, and that involves 2 people standing at one another, and we both have to run for the ball at the same time, jump into each other with our knees, and then punch the ball away. So I'm getting very good at learning how to avoid knees. But funnily enough, it sounded really tough when I watched it, but it is so much better on my body, because netball is so much harder on your body with stopping and starting and having to take a ball and get hit. Whereas in football, I'm allowed to roll around on the ground. So I'm like running around with the ball like a little kid, like I'm back in netter and I didn't know what the stepping rule was. And, you know, getting tackled and all of that. But for me, more than anything else, the reason that I'm enjoying it the most is because it is part-time. I'm training after work hours, which I know a lot of countries in this, you know, in this room still do. But that's why I'm loving it so much, because I get to be Sharni the human during the day, and I get to play footy with my girls at night, and everyone's got a really good grasp on what life's all about, and that really supportive community, and learning really new skills, which is fun. And I thought netball would translate a bit better, but it definitely does not. I suck. I'm definitely not going to be the next hero of AFLW, that's for sure.
I don't know. I don't know about that. Your competitive side will come through. You'll be fine. Yeah. This mixing sports then and changing for you and trying something different. There'll be those in the room that will do that whole, why don't you come back to netball? Will we ever see you on a netball court again? I know you came and did some Fast Five stuff over here in the UK. The Sharni Army was there.
They
Enjoyed that.
I love my UK Sharni Army.
Is it a case of never say never, even if it's walking netball?
Oh, yeah, look, I'll probably play social here or there maybe once upon a time, but I'm actually just really worried I'm going to get injured. My whole body's changed since playing AFL. I went from running in a 10-metre box to running 8 to 12 kilometres per training session per game. And so I'm just tall and skinny and lanky and I've lost all my power. And I'm just worried that if I get out on the netball court, my mind will still have in its head like what it wants to do. And my body, I can guarantee you, won't be able to do it. And that's obviously where injuries happen. So for me, yeah, I just really enjoyed my time in netball and what I did and love being here. I love getting around it. I'm so excited for this tournament. And so still obviously so passionate about the sport, but even more passionate now that I've been able to step away and really take it in and remember what it's all about.
We were joined by US Netball Outside who wanted a photo with it. Where are US Netball?
Okay. Shall we chat about this
now?
Oh,
he's over there.
Where are you? Yes, my mate.
Right. And I made him promise that he's going to take a US team up against international team.
And yes.
At Madison Square, which is something I've been on about. So that's going to happen, right? You'd come out of retirement from netball for that.
Yeah, I would definitely come out of retirement for that. But I don't know if you'd want me.
Well, I'd have you on the sideline commentating.
Yeah, let's do that.
Anyone that's downloaded the app and seen you on telly brilliantly presenting, commentating, know that you've got that in your locker. Just one final thing then. Athletes transition all the time in, out of sport to different sports. Is that one other area that we need to address? How you go from being that full-time athlete into a new career? Is there more that could be done in safeguarding and helping you on that next step?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's something that we can continue to work on, but just the education around every athlete, no matter how long you play for or what level you play for, when you give it up, it's always really hard and a bit of a hit to the ego. And I think for me, even though I came out to play AFLW, it was really hard saying goodbye to netball. And, you know, just recently, you know, going through that process, it was really tough, and I knew it was going to be tough. So I didn't seek help because I'm like, of course I'm going to be feeling down. I miss it. Doesn't mean that, you know, I made the wrong decision, but this is just how it goes. So I didn't seek help. But then, you know, about 2 months ago, I found myself back in the hole and I was like, oh, why again? But everyone knows that mental health isn't something that just goes away. So for our athletes, just having that education around that it's okay to talk about it if you're struggling, really help them discover what it is going to be outside of netball that they want to do. Try and work with them a lot earlier around what it is that they're going to be if they're not studying or working already, what that is going to be probably at least, you know, 4 years, not that you can pick, but 4 years out of, say, retirement. So like with me, I was, you know, my dream was to play, you know, in the Commonwealth Games last year and in the Worlds this year. And I pushed myself so hard that I didn't even get to make it. And now, you know, I'm a 31-year-old figuring out what am I going to study? What am I going to do? And that's really scary. So being able to work with players a lot earlier around what their passions are, helping them realise that. And not only that, that'll have a great effect on them in regards to what their self-worth is away from the netball court, which will in turn help their mental health and have that cycle around being more holistic and a better human as well as player anyway. But yeah, being organised and being proactive around helping these players, but knowing that even if they do have a plan in place, it's still going to be really hard for them, and just support them for a couple of years after that. With people who are, yeah, whether it's inside the sport, not inside the sport, and just touching base with them to check if they're okay. But yeah, Netball Australia have a great product in place. We're very well looked after in regards to the wellbeing. We have a diamond circle, so people donate to Confident Girls, and if we need anything, you know, after we've retired, we can reach out to them and ask for funding and you know, whether it be counselling or therapy, or if you break a leg or something, or you're struggling with an injury. So that's something that all countries can look into as well. And I think, I don't know what everyone does commercial-wise, and I know it can be really hard, especially for a lot of countries, but just know how great netball is and know that women equality is number one on most business agendas. So work with the countries that are doing really well at the moment to be able to sell your country commercially, to have those funds for your girls as well to build these programs, because you definitely can do it and it's worth it.
I started this by joking that it took me so long to get here because of all the selfies that you had and the people that you engage with. That ability to talk to people is something you've done on and off court. And I know it's always difficult to accept praise throughout your life. We have just done maybe 20, 25 minutes, which is just an nth of everything that you've achieved and will continue to achieve. So thank you from me, and I'm sure from everyone in this room, for what you've done on the court, what you're doing off the court, and what you will continue to do.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Caro. Thanks, everyone.